Chapter 24 of Captain Bill McDonald, Texas Ranger, A Story of Frontier Reform. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Bill Mosley, Llano County, Texas, USA. Captain Bill McDonald, Texas Ranger, A Story of Frontier Reform by Albert Bigelow Paine. 24. Captain Bill in Mexico. Mexican thieves try to hold up Captain Bill and get a surprise. Mexican police make the same attempt with the same result. President Diaz tries to enlist him. The First National Bank of Quanah failed in 1893, and one of the head officials, wanted for embezzlement and forgery, made his escape to Mexico, where he was arrested. Governor Hogg immediately made requisition for him, and Captain McDonald was detailed to bring him back across the line. Accompanied by one of the bank directors, McDonald set out for Mexico, only to find that his man had been set free, and was then making his way to remoter hiding. It was no difficult matter, however, to trace him, and the ranger captain presently overhauled him and put him in jail, there to await certain red-tape formalities incident to the deliberate Mexican official methods. Having a good deal of time on his hands, Captain Bill spent it in sightseeing. It was interesting enough, but he could not understand why he used up so many handkerchiefs. They seemed to disappear from his pockets in some magic way, and no matter how many he set out with, he presently found his supply entirely exhausted. He realized at last that this curious condition was not due altogether to accident, nor to carelessness on his own part. Laying in a fresh stock of handkerchiefs, he strolled warily along, seemingly unconscious of those who loitered near him, apparently absorbed in sightseeing. Presently, from the corner of his eye, he noticed a Mexican passing near him, make a quick movement with his hand, and caught a glimpse of white passing from his pocket to that of the Mexican. His sudden grab so startled this industrious person that he did not even attempt flight. Captain Bill thereupon promptly recovered his handkerchief, which he found had been lifted with a slender wire hook, an effective implement in busy and skillful hands. Without any further preliminaries, he set out for the jail with his prisoner, but meeting an American acquaintance to whom he explained the situation, he was advised to proceed no further with the case. "If you take him there, they will lock you up with him," he said. "Well, I guess they won't," said McDonald. "They certainly will," insisted his friend. "The law here is to confine the witness with the prisoner, and there's no telling when you'll get out." Captain Bill reconsidered, whirled his prisoner around, gave him an impetuous kick or two, and some advice, which perhaps reached his comprehension, though in an unknown tongue. The man fled. It is not known whether he took the advice or not. Captain Bill's adventures in Mexico were not over. A few nights later he visited a large casino where gambling was conducted openly, and mildly diverted himself by taking a hand at bucking the national game, monte. He played in luck, and the stakes became high. His winnings grew to a considerable sum, and there were greedy eyes in the group who watched his play. When he left the place at last and descended the stairway, he noticed that two men seemed to be following him. As he reached the dim hallway below, he stopped. They stopped also. Captain Bill was pleased. This was a game he preferred even to monte. He had played it so much oftener. He stepped out into the middle of the street, where he would have a clear field of observation, and set out leisurely as if he had not noticed anything wrong. The men following gained upon him, one dropping a little to the rear, the other working his way to the front. As they reached a dark locality, the man in front began to drop back a little, evidently getting ready to close in, while the one behind stepped up a little more lively, until he was about on a line with Captain Bill, who now noticed him throw back his serape as if to free his arm for action. No longer in doubt as to what they meant to do, the captain brought out his .45 with a swing that landed the barrel of it with full force on the head of the man in front. Wheeling, he covered the other, who, seeing his companion drop with a thud, promptly fled, the ranger captain close behind. They raced down the dim street, and the Mexican, trying to keep his eye on his pursuer and turn a corner at the same time, ran into a stone wall and nearly knocked his head off. Captain Bill was satisfied with the game as it stood, and set out for his hotel. He was not to arrive there, however, without further complications. The commotion of the foot race had aroused a squad of police, a poor lot in greasy white uniforms, and these bore down upon him now with a good deal of excited talk and gesticulation, none of which he understood. Apparently they thought he was a bloodthirsty person who was in the habit of knocking men over the head with his gun and chasing others into stone walls for amusement. He explained in the best Texan he could muster that the men had been trying to rob him, but it was no use. They insisted by signs that he must come with them. When he shook his head in refusal, they began reaching for their long revolvers, which they wore in clumsy holsters. Captain Bill knew this game also. He had played it in No Man's Land, in the Cherokee Strip, and he was still playing it in the Panhandle. It was his favorite and daily occupation. Before their guns were halfway to any effective position, he had them covered, and in tones that were universally understood, even when they convey words of strange meaning, he warned them to desist. Men are in the habit of obeying Bill McDonald under such conditions. The Mexican police obeyed him, and when he indicated that they were to march in front of him, they did so in a formation at once orderly and well maintained. He directed them toward the Hotel Guadaola, where he was stopping. Arriving there, he explained to the guard, who understood English, what had happened, and instructed him to convey the information to the police, with his thanks for their courteous and prompt attention, and a request that they should meet him at the office of President Diaz at 10 o'clock the following morning. The guard undertook to do this, and the police went away, dazed and muttering. They were on hand next morning at the President's office, when Captain Bill arrived. During his sojourn in the city, McDonald had come in contact a number of times with President Diaz, and a pleasant friendship had sprung up between them. Diaz, who has an excellent knowledge of English, heard the captain's explanation now with a good deal of amusement, and after dismissing his policeman with some paternal advice, he presented Captain Bill with a pass which gave him the freedom of any portion of the city at any hour and under all circumstances. The friendship between Diaz and Captain Bill ripened into something like intimacy now, and a few days later the Mexican president, in discussing the nation's troubles with Guatemala, invited the ranger captain's opinion of the situation and of the force in the field. "Well, Mr. President," said Captain Bill, "I don't think much of your Mexican soldiers, but I could take a squad of Texas Rangers and go down to Guatemala and clean up that outfit down there, capture their finances, and bring their government to terms in 24 hours. The Mexican president's eyes showed his approval of this scheme. "I think a good deal of your Texan rurales," he said, "but they have killed a lot of our people, too." Captain Bill nodded. "Only the kind that needed killing," he said. Very likely, assented Diaz, then added a moment later, Captain, I propose that you enlist with us for the purpose you mentioned just now, and bring over 500 of your Texas cowboys to assist in the undertaking. Diaz waxed enthusiastic over this idea. Captain Bill was not unwilling to enter into the scheme. The matter went so far as to get into the newspapers, but at that point it came to a sudden end. Governor Hogg and Adjutant General W.S. Mabry, a fine soldier who later died in the Cuban War, did not propose to have their ranger captain go off on any such filibustering expeditions, and promptly nipped the whole matter in the bud. Captain Bill stayed for a considerable time in the Mexican capital, for his companion, the bank official, fell very ill, and the captain turned nurse to pull him through. He very soon became a well-known figure in the city, being often pointed out as the man who had taken a squad of police in charge, who was going to bring his rangers down to whip the Guatemalans, and whose skill with the six-shooter was nothing short of miraculous. This last belief was in some manner sustained one day when he visited a shooting gallery in company with an American dentist, who had taken pleasure in showing him the sights of the quaint old town. Captain, suppose you shoot at these targets as rapidly as you can and see how many you'll miss, he said, when they were inside. Without hesitation, McDonald drew his revolver and opened a perfect fusillade, hitting a target at each shot. Two Mexicans who were practicing in the gallery made a wild break for the open air and safety. Soldiers and police came running in excitement and confusion to discover the cause. It was all over by this time, and the officers, seeing only Captain Bill and the dentist, stood gaping, waiting an explanation. "It is nothing," said the dentist, in Spanish. "My friend the captain was only practicing a little to keep his hand in." End of chapter 24.